Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
And we don't have Sarah with us. We did say she was coming, but she's currently, right now, in the air. She's flying from London back to New Zealand, so we're wishing her all the best. And in her place, we have a wonderful guest returning back to the podcast. He's an actor, he's a storyteller, he's a film enthusiast. Welcome to the podcast, Billy Revell-Siō!
Hey, thank you for having me.
Welcome, Billy. And I'm trying to remember the last time you were with us. What was the last episode we had?
Jeremy, I can't remember.
Wait, was it the Five Bloods?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that was it. Yeah.
The Five Bloods and The Three Kings.
Mm-hmm.
Two films that, one aged all right, and the other one was dead on arrival.
Oh, that's so sad.
Welcome, Billy. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. However, two films came out very recently about the multiverse. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, rather than looking at a retrospective film, let's look at the two films that are dealing with the multiverse right now. That being Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Yes, I'm getting nods from, yep. And Everything Everywhere All at Once. An indie film which is actually doing pretty well at the box office around the world, even though you can't seem to find it anywhere in New Zealand. The connection being not just that they're multiverse films, but they're also films about mother and child relationships. All right, William, give us a bit of an introduction about these films.
All right, guys. I just saw a movie in 2022 featuring a fantastical yet nuanced look at the Chinese immigrant experience in North America, where a beleaguered mom struggles to connect with her increasingly estranged daughter. Supported by a meek, kind-hearted husband and an elderly man played by James Hong, who may be more than he appears. Our heroes must reforge this mother-daughter relationship or risk cataclysmic destruction. But enough about turning red, everybody! Also, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It is, as we said, dear listener, in our last episode, the parallels between these two movies so very, very different. So Turning Red, the Pixar Panda movie, and this movie by the Daniels about, well, everything. A mishmash of kung fu tropes and Michelle Yeoh's, like, her own acting history, and nihilism and faith and just the kitchen sink included. Yes, the parallels are incredible and uncanny.
Nice. And I love that you did bring that back up again, because we'd already kind of made that connection last episode with Phoebe, and it's cool to be able to talk about it, because we hadn't planned to talk about this movie. Mm-hmm. We sort of pivoted and shifted once we all got to the cinema to see it. So the other film is the latest in the Marvel offering. It is...
Wait, guys, hang on. I watched today a Sam Raimi schlockfest. Wow. Lots of fun, featuring Bruce Campbell repeatedly punching himself in the face, where our hero faces up against the Book of the Damned and a horde of demonic monstrosities, as well as evil doppelgangers. But enough about Evil Dead 2.
I love Evil Dead 2, and I think we had to make those connections because it is very much a Sam Raimi film, very clearly. Hey team, we're going to be spoilering both movies, and both films have some great things to be spoiled, so if you haven't seen either film, I suggest pausing this episode and coming back to it at a future date. Or, if you don't like horror movies that much and need to know what happens, listen to all the spoilers, because I think it's fair to say Doctor Strange is pretty much a horror movie. Mm-hmm. And on that note, I'm going to pass it to my friend Billy to talk about the experience he had watching Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
So I've got two daughters, 9 years old and 5 years old. And I've been looking for someone to go to the movies with more, because, being a dad, sometimes it's hard to find the time between kids and being able to do the things you want to do. So anyway, I've been getting my kids to catch up on, watching the old Doctor Strange at home through Disney Plus. So then I thought it was a good idea. After school, I surprised them, got them tickets to watch it in IMAX, which was great, and they were terrified. It was my youngest one had her fingers in her ears at least half of the film. It was just way too loud. Like the mix, I guess it's IMAX. You get the full experience, but I wasn't expecting it, and I knew that it was going to have moments of darkness from the trailer. but I didn't think it was going to be that dark. It got really, really dark.
Yeah, it really did. And the Evil Dead connection is so clear. Evil Dead, when I saw it, I was 19 years old at university. I watched it at the top of the Victoria University library.
Whoa.
You used to be able to go and book out DVDs and watch them. And I thought I'll watch this film. I had to turn it off. Like, I was in a public space. It terrified me so much that I had to turn it off. And I don't know if I've ever gone back and watched it. I've watched Evil Dead 2. I've watched Army of Darkness. And it was all there, like the camera, like even Wanda possessing herself, the camera is like the demonic camera in Evil Dead. The Deadite with Doctor Strange reanimating his own body. And I mean, all of those...
All the canted angles, the dolly zooms, like, this is just a Sam Raimi movie, and it's awesome.
I mean, Wanda's mirror, kind of being in the mirror, is very much out of Army of Darkness, because there's a scene where the mirror breaks and little versions of I want to say Bruce Lee, but it's not. What's his name? Bruce Campbell. Yeah. Ash come out of the mirror. Wow. Yeah, wow. My sister actually, she messaged in our family chat. She said, off to the movies, photo of the movies. And I got the message like half an hour later. So I was like, well, they're in the movie. And I said, Doctor Strange, good luck putting the kids to bed tonight. And it wasn't Doctor Strange. It was the Lost City. But I feel for you, Billy.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely felt embarrassed walking out of the movie with my kids. Like, because I probably should have left halfway as well. Like, but I was like, no. We paid a lot for the tickets.
And for IMAX.
I find IMAX too loud anyway. I've talked about it before, but when I went and saw, I think it was Dunkirk. I've got issues with Christopher Nolan sound mixing anyway, but it's just muddy and messy and garish. Like, it hurts my ears. Whereas if you go to somewhere like the VMAX at Newmarket, brand new theatre, I find the mixing is so much nicer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, we'll be doing that for a while.
What do people think about Madness of... I don't even know what it's called. Madness of Murkiness? No.
The mountains are multiverse, yes. So I saw it this morning, just in time for the podcast. I really liked it. And maybe surprisingly really liked it. Kind of just like the first Doctor Strange, because I didn't see that one at the movies, and I saw it, weeks later, and thought, man, I should have gone to the movies, because Jeremy, I know you and Sarah, well, especially Sarah, was really, really saying it was like a good cinematic experience. And I think for this one, I had no real hopes going in. I knew it had all these production problems, and the reviews weren't great. And to be fair, it does feel like a mishmash of two different movies, right? The MCU product and a Sam Raimi high-budget horror movie. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. But when it works, guys, this movie is so much fun. It's just fun. That whole... Sorry, guys, spoilers, but the stuff at the end, like the third act, Marvel movies usually have really weak third acts, but I was hooting and hollering. Like, this is... when he was possessing like zombie Strange and him being carried along by a swarm of skeletons. Like, I want more of this, please, Marvel.
Yeah.
What were the production issues? I don't know about that.
Oh, I mean, the original director of Doctor Strange and the original writer, Scott Derrickson, who did Insidious and those movies, they both left the project near the beginning because of quote-unquote creative differences. They were wanting to take, I think, the movie in a much more horror direction, like even more so. And then Marvel, I think, wanted this to be more connective tissue with Phase 4.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
And so Sam Raimi was brought on quite late in pre-production.
I have a major criticism with this movie, which I'll get to, but I really enjoyed all of the Sam Raimi-isms. I think the pace of the movie was awesome. I loved all of the gags and gimmicks, and I think it fit really nicely within the multiverse kind of trope, or not trope, what's the word? Conceit, just to be able to play with all these different things, all these different pieces. It made for a really fun time. And, all the creepy stuff with, Wanda coming out of the mirror and people being pulled into reflections and that sort of stuff. The spirits forming a cape. Like, it was just really, really, really fun. What did you think, Bills?
I think I didn't go into it with that understanding of it. Like, I wasn't expecting to watch a horror film. So, like, in retrospect, I think it was really cool that they experimenting with these other genres within the Marvel universe. But I don't know, like, I think I'm getting a little bit of kind of tired of the Marvel verse a little bit. Like, I think they're trying to string things along and hold things together, and it feels like it's a little bit at its tatters. Like, in terms of when I think about Doctor Strange's character, I don't know that I've learned much more about him other than he's just a really irresponsible person. Yeah. You know? And I think like I learned more about that in the last Spider-Man movie, really. Which is the thing, you know, I mean, I don't know. Like, and this was one of the troubles about taking my kids to this movie, knowing that in order to watch this movie, you have to have all of the context of the other ones to fully enjoy it. I think as a Marvel film, I think as a horror film, like if you were to watch it by itself, it might, you know, I might have had a different experience, but I don't know that what I'm looking for anymore in a Marvel film anymore.
Yeah. How did your kids like the first Doctor Strange?
Yeah, they loved it, man. Like, I think it's because also, like, it's quite an experience, eh? Like, in terms of all the multi-dimensional kind of things. Like, I think also there's the Spider-Man Far From Home, like, did it well as well with Dr. Mysterio and all of the trippy cinematics. I think is really fun for kids to watch. They're really into it. And the whole magic aspect, because they're quite into Harry Potter and stuff like that as well. Yeah, so they have had experience with some scary things because they've watched all the Beast movies now too. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I feel like also Benedict Cumberbatch is like really awesome, and I wonder how limited he feels in this role. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it was okay.
My biggest criticism is that this film both needed you to understand what happened in the WandaVision TV show, and it undercut the resolution of that TV show. So there are spoilers here for that TV show, but I think if you've seen the Doctor Strange film, it kind of spoils the things anyway. You know, WandaVision as a show is about her coming to terms with her lover being dead, and then she eventually manifests these children, and then she loses those children as well. And in order to deal with that pain, she controls an entire city. And the show ends with her realizing that she can't do that anymore. She needs to find peace in another way and moves on. And this film opens with her being full-on villain. And there's no transition into that.
Well, there's a little bit with the stinger of the show, right? Because at the very, very end of WandaVision, you see her with the Darkhold, like kind of creating the semblance of normality in the little cabin. But in fact, she's hearing voices of Billy and Tommy and starting to go, you know, Red Eyes evil.
Right. Okay, well, I mean, I don't mind that suggestion, but the film assumes too much of the audience to come along for that emotional journey without taking us there. I think it's probably similar to the Daenerys. The Daenerys going. Well, I still say she didn't go mad, but you know, her jump to murdering everybody at the end of Game of Thrones. Spoilers for Game of Thrones. But hey, it's been years now. If you haven't watched it, get onto it. Or maybe don't, because people hated the ending. But it's that same kind of thing, right? If you don't bring your audience along for the ride, then people are going to feel betrayed by that. And I just loved WandaVision WandaVision. I loved Wanda as a character and the Scarlet Witch. And I also feel like they were suggesting in that show that she was able to wield this great power in a way for good. And this film just made her completely a villain, as well as, she even says it herself, how come you, Doctor Strange, get to make a massive decision that effectively kills people for 5 years and has huge traumatic effects in the world? And when I do it, I'm seen as
a monster.
A monster. And I mean, the film paints her as this hysterical mother. And it just was it felt a bit mansplaining. I mean, it was just a little bit gross. And I never bought onto her being a villain. And so therefore, and the moment she started killing people, I was like, well, she's going to die at the end. You can't kill all these people and still survive.
And her body count just keeps ratcheting up as well.
Yeah.
I mean, across many multiverses, not just the original one.
My boyfriend Josh said to me, he's like, why didn't they make Agatha the baddie of this show? I'm like, of this film, sorry. That would have been so much more fun.
Yeah, I feel like this is another one of the problems with Marvel as well, is that they're at, like they have so many fans wanting different things, and that they at the end of the day have to kind of give some of that fan service as well. And I don't know, like I felt like the Wanda thing was this explanation, or it's that argument on the internet of like, Goku versus the Hulk. You know what I mean? Like I feel like part of the thing of it was wanting to show just how powerful the Scarlet Witch actually is in the multiverse, just how overpowered that she could be. You know what I mean? Like if we kind of got a little bit of it in the Civil War thing of like imagine if one of them was on the wrong side. You know what I mean? Like the power of that. But
I love that film, and I think Marvel films, when they work well, and they generally work really well, is when they focus their stories so clearly on the emotional journeys of their characters. Because at the end of the day, there's no logic as to why Wanda wouldn't just decimate everybody immediately and anyone would have any resistance. Because it's like, when two superheroes are fighting and punching each other, you're like, well, the logic of this doesn't make sense. But it's fine if the emotional journey is there. And I just didn't feel like they had... She went full villain so quickly. They kind of resolved it at the end with her realizing she'd become a monster,
which was a very, very weak resolution. I thought the her seeing her kids and them hiding behind a little staircase banister, like, this is how you're gonna do it. All right.
Can we just talk about those two boys? Great actors. But my gosh, that scene where they sing a song to their mum was... Wow. I just turned to Josh and I was like, what is happening?
It felt like a real Sam Raimi thing. It's like something that's just so camp and so cheesy, and just roll with it.
It felt like a scene out of The Happening.
I will say, in terms of like dramatic arcs, there is someone who does get I was going to say decent. It's not decent. A dramatic arc. And that's America Chavez, the newcomer, the girl who can punch through dimensions. Super awesome character in the comics. I thought the actress did really well. Like, as kid actors are kind of hit or miss, but she was good. It's just the resolution of the arc was so hilariously pat. It's like, Doctor Strange, I can't use my power. You just had to believe in yourself. It's like, whoa, she's punching holes left, right, and center.
She was
my
cool.
gosh.
She was really cool, but she didn't really actually get to do much.
She's just a MacGuffin through most of it.
She was the damsel in distress, and adding to the mansplaining comment, it's like, Doctor Strange is the only one that knows what to do. And it's like, you've got flippin' Scarlet Witch over here, and you've got this girl that can punch through dimensions. Also, can I just say, when they went into that space with the magical good book, and they left the door open, I'm like, well, Scarlet Witch is so going to come in, and she did. And I'm like, this is what, to close the door.
My saddest thing about America was that she seemed to come from this utopian universe, where like she has these lesbian parents and like all good and that, but like her name's still America. Which still implies that America exists in that utopia.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, I love that. Well, I mean, that critique of America is maybe a good place to pivot to talk about our other film, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Who wants to kick us off into this part of the discussion?
I can do that. Guys, in 2016, there was a movie called Swiss Army Man. By Daniels, which is what they like to be known as. And it features Daniel Radcliffe as a farting corpse, and Paul Dano as a suicidal man who becomes best friends and maybe lovers or something more with the corpse, and they go on various magical adventures through the Oregon woods. That movie's amazing, and I'm so happy that the same creative team has come together to make something that's kind of codifying a lot of what makes Swiss Army Man so great, and being rewarded for it in a really big way. I think audiences are responding so well to this film about the multiverse, but not just as a throwaway concept, which I feel kind of is how Doctor Strange treats it, but more as a central metaphor for the paths not taken in life. And it's so beautiful and so relatable, even though it is at its very core like this heady sci-fi what if.
Yeah, I agree. Like I feel a little bit bad how I went into it. Like I didn't know much about the film going in, and I haven't seen Swiss Army Man, which I'm excited to watch now. But I thought it had some kind of connection to the 2001 film with Jet Li.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, it's a multiverse and like kung fu. It's like there's got to be a sequel or something here, which is terrible. But
the one is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, I think it was also, I don't know. Like I think for me, was quite a moving film for me. Like, and I think it's also quite timely. Like, I don't know that film exists outside of the here and now, if that makes sense, in like a post-information age.
Oh yeah.
Kind of exploration of the elasticity of truth and reality for everyone. And that there is like a sense we're all in our own little like multiverses, if that makes sense. And I think like these stories really show well. And I think like one of J. Cole's songs that I really like, he talks about like there's no such thing as a life that's better than yours, you know what I mean? And the power of our main character being that all of the paths not taken were the things that made her the right person, you know what I mean? Like, it was definitely a story of hope for me.
Wow, I love that reading, Billy. I fully agree with you, like that, and William, both of what you said, and I hadn't articulated it to myself in that way, and I love that. And just to pivot off what you're saying with the lead actor, Michelle Yeoh is phenomenal. Like, I hope she gets an Oscar nom for this. These sort of films don't get recognised at the Oscars generally, but she deserves it. This is one of the greatest performances I've seen in a long time, let alone Michelle Yeoh's performances. And I think maybe William, you told me, or someone was telling me that there was an interview with her where she was actually quite tearful because she was given the opportunity in this film to exhibit that range. Yeah. Was it you were telling me this? Mm-hmm. And that she's usually just the martial arts person. And the fact she has like snotty nose, and she's like, even the part where she, what is it? I forgot about it until my flatmate told me. Rakakuni?
Oh.
Like, that is a joke. And then the way they pay that off is so wonderful.
The construction of some of the jokes in the movie, wow.
And I just want to know what their creative process was. Like, when did they just give, like, they would have had the core idea, right? And then they just give their creative teams free reign to come up with as many different gags as they could. Because it felt really energized by the creative process. It felt really free, and I'm thinking that could only occur through everybody buying into that. Yeah. It reminds me of early Baz Luhrmann films where hugely collaborative process before CGI gets too much in the way, and really exciting. Peter Jackson's early stuff has that energy about it as well.
Sam Raimi's as well.
Sam Raimi, it's a great connection. And I think what makes this film work beyond the fantastic cast, like the cast is, every single person in that cast are like gems. And I mean, the daughter was the only person I wasn't familiar with, and she was absolutely fantastic. But the core of that movie, it's about a family. It's a family story. It's a primal story of a mother and a daughter, of a husband and a wife, a father and a daughter. This immigrant family trying to survive the tax system. Dreams not happening, being comfortable with where you're at. Two women connecting. I think the relationship between Michelle Yeoh and Jamie Lee Curtis, I mean, they really exaggerate it with the sausage finger world, but the relationship between these two women is really powerful. There's just so many layers of heart, primal storytelling. At the end of the day, it's a mother coming to terms with her life and being happy with it.
Yeah.
And it's told with great creativity in the multiverse.
Yeah. There's like a great mix of the absurdity that's kind of anchored, I feel, by like also great symbolism, like the Taurus kind of centralization of that, and how it kind of advances the story. That it kind of connects all these different points of ridiculousness together, and that like it is in that understanding of kind of they are all different, but they are all one at the same time. It's that. The central, like it's in the name, right? Everything, everywhere, all at once. Like it all exists at the same time.
I mean, what you were talking about before, Billy, about how this movie taking place in the here and now. I mean, the creators have said like it was originally sort of inspired by the internet, right? And of all these disparate communities and corners of the internet, and people living in these completely isolated communities and thought patterns, and with Trump and with how especially stuff in the North Americas has been happening, kind of them wanting to say that is not all there is, right? There is hopeful connectivity or some way of configuring yourself to exist in this world.
Wow. That's so cool. I remember somebody saying once, and I don't remember where I've heard this, it's really hard to write a commentary or satire on the internet because it's changing and developing so fast that by the time you've written something, it's kind of out of date. And I love that connection. I hadn't really made that. But as you've said that, and you said, Billy, about the here and now, I'm like, there's just extra layers to this film that is so satisfying. We wanted to go... my boyfriend and I, Josh, we wanted to go see it again the other day, and it was sold out.
Oh, whoa.
Because it's only at 1 or 2 cinemas in Auckland. And I'm like, I want to watch this movie again, and I don't want to... Like, I'll watch it at home, but I want to go to the movies again to see it. It's making me think of Tenet, and how Tenet... I have a lot of criticisms about that film. That had a central idea that was really cool, and they complicated it with too much trickery, and the central story was really boring. This kind of abusive relationship, and this dude coming in to save this woman and her son. Like, it just was a bit, for me, wasn't fully realized and a bit clunky. The central idea of this film is so great, and probably with like a tenth of the budget of Tenet and the Multiverse and Doctor Strange, and it's just fun and heartfelt. I think I cried a couple of times, laughed a lot. William and I went and saw it with Josh as well, and actually I turned to William at one point. Listeners, if you listen to our episode on In the Mood for Love, there's one of the multiverses is drawing directly from that film, and I turned to William. I was like, "Is this riffing off In the Mood for Love?" And you were like, "Oh my gosh, it is!"
It's the Wonka universe.
So I'm thinking there must be other, and I've only watched that movie because we did it for the podcast. I reckon there'll be other deep cuts in there as well. That as I go back and watch it, more and more details will emerge. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's that," or "Oh, that's referring to that."
Yeah, I think also it was really obvious. Where Multiverse of Madness has all of this, it's good. Great kind of story to draw on that we know from the past. To see just how well just good story writing works. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I really liked about this movie was that. And also the resolution was around empathy for me. You know what I mean? It was really finding those moments of empathy. When the tax woman, finds that connection with Michelle's character. Yeah. And that they're going through a divorce, and she knows the sadness of that. And there was some really interesting, in the expectations we have for our children, right? And how we can push them too far. And I felt like there was an exploration of kind of depression as well. And like you were talking about with the internet, I think we know all of these things, and yet somehow levels of depression are rising, even though we have access to so much more now. It's almost the more we have, the less we have. And that the central, or the character around the daughter being this omnipotent being almost at the end. And she has that name that they call her. I don't know if there must be.
I wrote it. Jobu Tupaki.
Yeah. But and ultimately all she wants is that connection with her mother, and that the empathy is what brings her back from her mom. And
that shot where her going into just self-destruction, basically it's nihilism wrought large. This idea of the everything bagel, and once there's everything, then what's the point? Of her kind of giving up and sinking in to the blackness, and then just her fingertips reaching out, because she, at the core of her being, still craves that connection, and it's the last part of her to let go. And that's what saves the entire multiverse. Is pretty awesome.
It's so complex as well, because you've got Michelle Yeoh's character. She's effectively given up as well. They've both given up, or they're both dealing with this nihilism in different ways. And it's quite wonderful to see that play out. And it's she's aware that her daughter's on the verge of some, potentially suicide or something really significant, leaving the family. There's something there. But she still has her concerns, and the way it's coming out is it's just adding to the pressure. I also found it really interesting, the red herring of the lesbian relationship. There was kind of the suggestion that was going to be the tension, which I think is the tension resolution for the grandfather character, right? Mm-hmm. And once that's got through, it's that mum, that's not the point. That's not what I'm dealing with. And it's similar again to Turning Red, right? That in Turning Red, there's this idea that what's being talked about is the bodily changes of puberty and you know, whether it's a young woman getting her period for the first time or her body changing. But at the end of the day, it's actually about her wanting to live into the parts of herself that she doesn't see fit in with her family narrative. It's quite spectacular, and it's interesting. It's interesting to know that two men wrote this story, and I'd love to know what the engagement it was, and again the creative process. Like, what was the female voice in this?
Because I mean, I don't know if you guys read, but originally Jackie Chan was supposed to be the main character, and when he turned it down, they gender flipped it, and it makes it. I mean, it would have been just as exciting with the father son story, but we've seen a lot of father son stories. You know, like it is a primal source of storytelling. Relationships with parents is always going to be relevant to us, but it was I think the female dynamic, and I guess the queer dynamic, because the daughter's queer and there's that queer relationship with the sausage fingers people. Adds another layer to it as well, which just makes it interesting.
Yeah, I think like there was also an aspect to do with the dad character as well, in terms of like, I think it definitely challenged in a Western sense the ideas of what a typical family or how that is run. You know what I mean? Like, it's quite a matriarchal family, which is I wouldn't say typical of a Western story of a family as well, and I think there was a moment where it felt a little bit like he had been kind of like taken his manliness away, which was an interesting dynamic as well, I think, for the main character, in terms of there was when he flips to his alternate self, she was very attracted to him, and then not when he comes back as his softer, more serving of herself.
Interesting. Well, it's in both that, and I can't help but go back to Turning Red. Like, the father figures are more reserved than their well. I mean, in Everything Every All at Once, he's very active and energetic, but they take second seat to the wives in that situation. And both of them, they're the kind of core, the key to the revelations that happen in the stories, which is, in terms of gender storytelling, it's, again, really interesting. It's a really interesting and complex commentary on both male and female kind of roles.
And for both these movies to come out within, a week of each other, basically. And then for this movie to come out within a month of Doctor Strange, there's some sort of zeitgeist happening, I feel.
Yeah, I think, again, it's the same thing. Like, the multiverse, we're exploring it more. Like, one of the problems with Madness, the Doctor Strange movie, like, I found it weird. Like, it seemed like there was something we're going on from Spider-Man, right? Like, he's already done something bad with the multiverse. And then it's like all of a sudden, like, it just happens. He stumbles upon another multiverse quest has just happened to come up, and it has no connection to what, like, all of the stuff he messed up.
When they're going to be released in the other direction, so Multiverse is going to come first, then Spider-Man. Spider-Man was such a better film. It was such a great film. And maybe it's just too. Oh, do you not think so? What's your issues with Spider-Man?
No, I just find it so cheesy. Like, in bringing back Tobey Maguire, like, there was some cool gimmicks in it. Like, does he shoot webs out of his butt? Yeah, and that was carried on. That was fun.
Do they do this? They do the classic pointing at each other?
They do. Of course they do.
Promotional image they did, but yeah.
Green Goblin says, "I'm somewhat of a scientist myself," and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What's that from?
Spider-Man 1.
Oh,
it's
right.
like one of his most famous internet lines.
Right.
Also, like lots of the things I didn't realize about Spider-Man. We're going into Spider-Man, but like,
well, Sam Raimi connection as well, right?
Yeah,
He did all those movies.
Like, I didn't realize that Stark was Tom Holland's Osborn.
Oh yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, all the other ones, he gets bitten by the spider from Oscorp.
Right.
And he must have got bitten by a spider from Tony Stark. Like, that's because there is no Oscorp in that universe anyway. Anyway.
Well, let's talk about that with the Doctor Strange film. We had the first crossover of the X-Men franchise into the Marvel franchise. Well, it's Marvel.
The Illuminati.
That was so dumb. What is that from the comics?
It's from the comics.
There's also a hint of it. I think in an earlier, like, quite a way back in a Iron Man film,
right,
where he's got like a Illuminati folder.
Right. Well, I mean, it makes sense because of Doctor Strange whole kind of imagery. But that bringing in Patrick Stewart. But can we talk about what is that buggy that he was in?
Wait. It's the X-Men 90s cartoon. That was his like super wheelchair he rode around in.
They're really trying to weave in the threads,
Yes.
eh?
It looks real bad in live action, by the way.
It does.
And was it just me, or did Patrick Stewart seem really uncomfortable? Because he had to keep his elbows up because the thing was too big.
Every time he came into the screen, there was a couple sitting next to me, and they just lost it laughing. So goofy.
How did your audiences react to all the cameos, by the way? Because when they played the X-Men theme from the 90s cartoon, my audience went nuts.
I'm thinking about the Spider-Man movie when Tobey Maguire came in and didn't take a breath.
and here's, quote, Reed Richards, the smartest man alive.
Yeah. Was he going to be the Fantastic Mr. Fantastic?
No, because I know fan casting, everyone's like, oh, John Krasinski needs to be Reed Richards. Blah, blah. And so this is just, for the fans, quote unquote. Is he going to be? Like, has it been confirmed?
I was more interested in, is Keanu Reeves confirmed as Doctor Doom?
Oh, wow.
Anyway, that's the one I was worried about.
That would be very, very cool.
Wow. It was kind of lame how fast all of those superheroes died at the hands of Scarlet Witch. I was like, oh, this is dumb.
Although, still, I don't know if Sam Raimi, intended for this, or this was a Marvel mandate, but it did feel quite Sam Raimi to like introduce all these like fan favorites, and they die in increasingly horrific ways. I just laughed out loud when they revealed Black Bolt. Did anyone see the Inhumans show when it was on ABC?
No, I missed it.
It's like, I saw the pilot because it's like, oh, Marvel. And it's the worst thing that the modern MCU has ever done. Yeah. Like, it's a terrible, terrible show. And Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones is the baddie and he just pontificates. But Black Bolt, the same actor plays him in that show and in this show. His name's Anson Mount. It's like, oh my God. Like, they actually, sticking to their guns and saying, we want to bring him back in the fold. He still wears a goofy ass helmet and he gets killed immediately. Like, it's so crazy.
That whole sequence where he scream Doctor Strange to death?
Yeah. He's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, interesting. There were some interesting choices there, which I was like, that's fine. It's a bit goofy and
there's so much fan service.
Yeah.
It is so much like even the monsters that come out. The one-eyed tentacle dude.
I love that.
Like off.
But I don't know what it's from.
It's like off the
games.
Yeah.
Marvel v Capcom. Yeah.
So it's like they're drawing on all of these different like pop culture things to do with Marvel and putting them in the movies, which is what we've always wanted, right? It's the same thing with the X-Men thing. It's like, why can't they just exist together, please?
Yeah.
It's just, and I think it's a little bit too late, you know what
I mean?
Yeah,
right. I hear you.
Like, also, I feel like, with the stinger at the end with Charlize Theron.
What the heck was that?
I was like, oh, you guys are trying so hard now to stay relevant.
I was just like, wait, who is that? I know it's Charlize, but who is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I tell you what though, I still love, even though Bryan Singer is, dodgy as, the one that he did, the one where he brought the two franchises of that world together.
Days of Future Past.
Yeah. I had a great time in that film. And that was, what did we have then? Did we have the Avengers then? Like, that was one of the first kind of bringing things together films. And I still think, the first X-Men movie, in my mind, started the modern superhero genre. I mean, we had the Batman films, we had the early Superman movies, but
I guess Blade was also in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's Spawn, there's a few random ones like that. But that first X-Men film, and starting it in the Holocaust with Magneto, grounding this in a real world, that first X-Men film is still so good. And that second one, it was such a good sequel.
So good.
And then, number 3.
Just like the Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, true.
Speaking of Sam Raimi.
True. Yeah.
But by the way, Billy, bring up the big eyeball tentacle monster. That was such a cool start. Like, him with the saw blades, and Wong coming in to join the action, and how I feel like they really play around with Stranger's powers. Like, it's not just him drawing circles in the air. Like, sometimes he creates a portal and there's some sort of demonic hellbeast coming out to give him a boost or a double jump. It's like, this actually feels very, very different. I mean, much less clinical, and it's like, here's just some bright lights, special effects. Like, everything's much more tactile and fantastical.
Oh, and can we talk about the fight with music?
Oh,
That was very cool.
Yeah.
It was one of the coolest parts in the whole film. And I was like, by that point, I was like, I'm all for this.
Yeah, I see. And I think that's the part. You know, I mean, that's what I was looking for. Like, because when I think about Doctor Strange comics as well, like, they're always quite fantastical. It is that thing of playing with perception and all of those kind of things. So, yeah, I really like that part too.
I think I would have loved this movie. Like I said, if a different character was the villain, if it wasn't Wanda, I would have been all for it. And they could have picked another character that wasn't so integral to something that, like, that WandaVision for me was one of the best things I saw last year. I think it was in my top 3 of last year, and it was so rich in theme. And then this film kind of just wasn't. Like, you know, it wasn't.
Yeah, it's like the Apple model, right? Like, you have to have all of the different pieces of the Marvel to put it together. Like, the interesting thing to me is, like, how does this fit with Loki?
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
they've introduced this whole understanding of like this one single timeline, and like then there's multiverses that string out from there. So then how does that all exist in the same time and space as the multiverse?
I read something interesting. Someone said online that they think mountains. No, Multiverse of Madness is only happening because of the events of Loki. How because the TVA were demolished in Loki, so now the timelines can run rampant.
Yeah.
That is why all this stuff is happening.
Right,
Which is a really cool idea.
I haven't seen Loki, but that what you just described, that was introduced in the Avengers Endgame, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was the idea there, which I quite liked that logic. I didn't really understand it, but I was like, oh, there's something ahead.
The moment where he disappears, right, and becomes outside of that timeline.
Yeah.
Who?
Loki. So the
I never saw it.
idea in the show is that Loki joins basically the time cops. So Owen Wilson and some other people have a society where they police the timelines. There's one prime, sacred timeline, and everything that branches from it needs to be culled. And there's a baddie running around who is creating all these crazy timelines, and so Loki has to team up with Owen Wilson.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Is it good?
It's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
I really like it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm really aware of is, again, linking back to both Everything Everywhere All at Once and my criticisms of Multiverse of Mountains of Mr. Doctor Strange.
Mom.
Yeah.
Which is quite fitting, I guess.
Oh, wow.
It came out on Mother's Day as well.
Is, having that centralized, clear, primal story. Or just having a story. And I think about, like, the new Jurassic Park movie coming out. I'm like, I have no idea what this movie's going to be about. Is it really just going to be about them saving a baby dinosaur? Like, if that's going to be
That's what the trailers look like.
I mean, I'm like, oh, man, I hope that's not going to be the whole thing. Whereas the new Thor movie, which I'm so excited about, it's like so clearly he's like, I'm over this. I'm going to go on a soul searching adventure. And I'm like, that's going to be such a fun film to watch. I know that's going to be fun. And then when his ex-girlfriend comes back into it in the middle of it, like, that's going to be a cool tension. I can just, I'm already on board for the ride. Like, they just, Taika Waititi, I trust to, like, have a few gags all the way through, have some sort of resolution. I'm going to love it. This movie, again, Multiverse of Mr. Doctor Strange, it's fine. Hey, what's his journey? Because his is about whether he's happy.
And also control, right? Because his ex, Christine, at the beginning is like, you always have to hold the knife. And then at the end, he doesn't. He, instead of taking America's powers, he lets her, believe in herself and then to use those powers. And then he ends up bowing to Wong as Sorcerer Supreme. So he learns how to play second fiddle, I guess, is his journey.
So, like,
I don't buy it.
one of the things is, like, it leans so heavily, I feel like, on the what if stuff.
Oh yeah.
Have you watched What If?
I watched one episode.
That's what it does, you know what I mean. Like it's my thing of if you don't absorb all of this material,
It's homework.
like because he's like Doctor Strange's story in the What If one is the bad guy at the end, like his bad self.
Yeah.
And it's all based around Christine, and like knowing how central Christine is to his story, we don't get that if you don't really watch. You know what I mean? They try to introduce it at the beginning, but it's like, oh, I missed this whole life with Christine.
Yeah.
It's like, who?
Yeah.
Because you forget that Rachel McAdams is even in this movie. As well as Chiwetel Ejiofor. When he appeared, I was like, oh, right. He was a sidekick in the last one.
I was just thinking about Serenity, his character in Serenity, the Firefly film. You know, I think about what you're saying, William, in terms of him not having control. This film, if Scarlet Witch had not gone on such a murderous rampage, and her narrative had been in some way on a journey which seemed evil, but actually at the end of the day it was all good, and the journey of Doctor Strange was he actually just needed to let her do her thing, that would have been a much more satisfying story, because then it would have lived into what happened in WandaVision, and also his journey would have been like he doesn't need to always be in control. But that's not, like what you're describing is very surface level.
Yeah.
Because that America.
I don't think you believe in yourself, Jeremy. So
yeah, it's so patronizing. It's very mansplaining. Yeah. It's very patronizing, and it didn't land for me. Didn't land. All right, let's do final thoughts. Billy, give us final thoughts on these two films.
Final thoughts. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Great film. Probably my film of the year so far. Really relevant. Really great exploration of the multiverse. Mom. Doctor Strange. Mom, I'm going to use that. Bit hit and miss in service to the wider good of trying to keep Marvel alive and try to figure out what this new phase actually is and means. But kind of forgettable. And also a horror film, don't take your kids.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with you about Everything Everywhere All at Once. For me, it's not just one of the greatest films of this year. It's one of the best films I've seen in a long time. I think that it is very much of its time, timely, pertinent. The fact that it's both films kind of deal with versions of depression or versions of feeling a bit disconnected is very relevant to our world today, 3 years into this pandemic. And I really want to watch this film again at the cinema. I'll definitely be watching it again at home. I hope it gets the renewed life in New Zealand that it's been getting overseas and getting a wider release. This movie has the potential to be a slow burn and really build up a growing audience. And I really hope that the film gets recognition in the awards season. It is not the sort of film that usually would, but particularly Michelle Yeoh. I'm hoping it's like a Sigourney Weaver from Aliens situation where she might get a nomination for a film that usually wouldn't. And Multiverse of Madness, visually fantastic, lots of great gags, had a lot of fun. Great to see Sam Raimi back. I hope that this doesn't dissuade him from making movies just like his experience with his last movie did.
Oh, Oz, the Great and Powerful?
Oz, the Great and Powerful. Ooh. I was thinking Drag Me to Hell, which I quite enjoyed, but it was Oz, the Great and Powerful, which is not a good movie. But, you know, like I said, it really ruined the mythology of Wanda for me. They could have done that in a way that, you know, protected that character a bit more. And it kind of screws with the TV series as well, which I loved. So now when I go back and watch that, I'm always going to have this bad taste in my mouth that she goes into this direction. And it doesn't matter if she comes back from another universe or whatever. This version of the character has sort of been ruined. So I'm a little bit... No, I'm very gutted about that. And this is actually one of the worst Marvel movies I've seen in a long time as a result.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, over to you, William. Final thoughts.
Oh, that's amazing, Jeremy. As I said before, I quite liked Doctor Strange. It's a mess of a movie and it doesn't cohere at all. But what Sam Raimi brings to the table, I'm all for it. When I can't remember what the line is like, I can't possess anyone that's alive. It's like, yes, first pump. We briefly mentioned Bruce Campbell, but he's really fun in the movie as well as Papa Pizza or Pizza Papa. I love the visuals. I love all the little gags and that scene where Wanda's chasing them through the sewers. It's like, yes, this is what I want. Like something very, very visually and stylistically different that separates itself from all the other Marvel stuff. I completely agree, Billy. Like, all the attempts at kind of just weaving this into the greater Phase 4 Marvel stuff just really fall flat, and it feels like a bit of a waste of time as well. Even the fist pump moments with the crossover and the Illuminati, like, it was done so much better in Spider-Man. So much better. And plus, John Krasinski just looked hilarious in, like, kind of a skinny guy, like, bodysuit with the big old 4 on his chest.
They really downplayed the stretchy limbs as well, which
Yeah.
is my superpower of choice. Like, you just got to go full into the goofiness, like Mrs. Incredible or whatever her name is. Yeah.
But I will say, for Doctor Strange, it's one of the rare movies where I started off hating it, because it starts with something like 20 minutes of exposition. And the more it went on, I was like, yeah, I'm along for the ride. So I really liked it by the end. Everything Everywhere All at Once, completely echo what you guys are saying. It is, probably my film of the moment. I went home afterwards, Jeremy, and I cried. I was thinking about it and just tearing up in bed. It's very, very powerful stuff. I know in our group chat, I was posting all these references and these things that connected to the movie. I have some of them down here. Just things that seem to influence the movie, or that the movie loves, or the creators love, or some mix of that. The Matrix, Terry Gilliam, Jackie Chan, Stephen Chow. Oh my gosh, you guys, we haven't even mentioned the butt plug fight. Wow.
It's so good. I love that they suggest it, and then it pays off.
It pays off.
But they do that in so many different ways, like with the Rakakuni.
And that huge empathy fight with the empathy stairway, where to defeat all the baddies, she, like, empathizes with them.
That's right. Oh my god. I love the moment as well where they have to do all those weird little quirks to access, and it pans, and there's like someone's humping a photocopier, someone's like putting pepper in their eyes, like just all the random ass stuff.
And then, like, the little eyes that the husband puts things, and then like the rock turns around and it's got the eyes on it.
So the rock sequence.
So good. That, by the way, reminds me of a video game called, I think it's called Everything. I think it's from a guy, David O'Reilly, which is also about you playing as just everything. You can play as a rock or a unicorn or a car. Also, let's see, Michel Gondry, like just the handmade nature of all that stuff. Satoshi Kon with some of the mind-bending, like Millennium Actress, like what it means to be parallel versions of you. All that random stuff, like Douglas Adams with Hitchhiker's Guide, the Infinite Improbability Drive. And also Terry Pratchett with like just the humanity and the humaneness of everything. Yeah, guys, this movie, like, such a blast, and I cannot wait to revisit it.
Wow, I love all those references, and I absolutely agree with every single one of them. Well, thank you for being with us today, Billy. It's been so good having you back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context through SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio Public, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, which are also great places to let us know what you think of this episode, or give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then,
Nō hora mai!